Over the last few days, I spent most of my time testing different ways to level Pathfinder, and after leveling one character level 42 and another character level 58, I think I'm finally at the point where I have a good enough understanding of how to level to make this guide. This build will work for any kind of Pathfinder build, but it'll also work for Deadeye as well, since ascendancies don't really matter. For the starting point of this build, it will be super smooth if you have extra gold and around 10 exalts, but if you're starting fresh or totally broke, you can still play this build and upgrade your character along the way as currency drops to you. I actually played one of my characters fresh and had no issues leveling in the early game. The main thing is to consistently upgrade your bow for more flat damage, and make sure you are killing as many side bosses as possible. Once you get your first exalt, buy a nice quiver with flat damage, and you're going to be good to go. For those that are new to PoE and trading in PoE, here's a quick guide of how to search an item. First, you'll go to the website, pathofexile.com/trade2. Then once you're logged in, you'll see this page. For the item category, type quiver. Then under requirements, you can see a drop. If you can't see the drop down, hit the square. And for level, put your current level as the max. Then under stat filters, put the stats that you want. In this case, we want fire damage to attacks. So now, if we also want physical damage to attacks, just add another stat filter. Next, hit search, and that's basically how filtering works on the trade side. If you want to make sure your search is capped to 1 exalt, then add the filter under buyout price. And finally, to search by the highest roll of a mod, just click the mod you want to see the highest of, and it will filter by highest. As you can see, there's a ton of good leveling quivers for very cheap. As for the weapon, we are using Widowhail. If you want to search for a specific stat that's already on an item, just click the search icon after searching for that specific item, and it will autofill the mods on the item that you click. Widowhail is more expensive now for higher rolls, but it doesn't really matter what percent you get. The higher the better, obviously, but since we aren't scaling levels of gems while leveling, there isn't breakpoints to worry about. Anything above 200 is fine, just make sure it isn't corrupted. You can also search for non-corrupted items by selecting that filter as well. The next step is adding 2 sockets with Artificer Orbs and 2 Desert Runes for increased fire damage. You don't need to do this right away and can work towards this if this is something that you're doing on a fresh start, but for those that have the extra currency, it will make the early game even more smooth. And basically that's it for Twink Gear. You can obviously use things like Gold Rim or Wanderlust, but they are pretty much just for convenience. And Gold Rim is surprisingly expensive in PoE 2. For some reason, it's actually pretty rare. For the skills at the start, we're using Lightning Arrow with Lightning Rod and Orb of Storms. Lightning Arrow is linked to Martial Tempo and Pierce. Lightning Rod is going to be linked to Scatter Shot and Magnified Effect. And Orb of Storms is linked to Persistence and Overabundance. You will need to take a couple of int nodes early to get Orb of Storms and to be able to use it. And also, in order to find Orb of Storms, it's not in your recommended gems, so you're going to have to search for it under all gems. When you get your first aura, use Herald of Thunder, or you can wait for a bit and use Wind Dancer. The way this build works is pretty simple. You put down Lightning Rods, then you put down Orb of Storms, and what will happen is the Orb of Storms will trigger the Lightning Rods, so you'll do a ton of damage that way. And then while that's proccing, all you'll do is just shoot your lightning arrow for the rest of the downtime. As your damage falls off, don't be afraid to upgrade your quiver, and if you need to buy a couple of pieces of gear with life and res on it, it's well worth it. When leveling in Path of Exile 2, dying is incredibly punishing. So spending a little extra currency to limit deaths will make you way more currency in the long run. Getting the maps a couple of hours faster is way better than saving a few exalts early. At level 22 is when you'll swap to Explode Gas Arrow. You'll be using Gas Arrow linked with Scatter Shot, Martial Tempo, and when you get your 4th support, add Fire Infusion. For Flame Wall, you'll want to link it to Arcane Tempo and Spell Cascade, and again, once you get another Lesser Jeweler Orb, you'll link that to Persistence. And for your aura, we use Wind Dancer, and as you get more Spirit, add Clarity and Cannibalism. For this build, you want to put down your Flame Wall first, and enemies that are ignited will make it so your Gas Arrow explodes and does a ton of damage. So basically, just put down Flame Wall, shoot your Gas Arrow, and if the Gas Arrow goes through the Flame Wall, it'll explode on an enemy, or if the enemy is already ignited, the Gas Arrow will explode. As you level, just keep upgrading your quiver if your damage starts to fall off, and you can use this setup all the way to maps. Now for those that are looking to play Poisonous Concoction at some point, there's 2 different options. First, you can swap around level 40. This is after you get connected chemistry and poisonous concoction for your first 2 ascendancies. You'll also want the increased charge nodes on the tree, as well as the mana flask gain node. Then you will want to use a glow swarm, a unique ring that gives you mana flask charges. Pair that with a +2 proj gem quiver, and you'll destroy everything. At this point, you'll also probably want dexterity on your quiver as well. Now, if you don't want to spend the time or currency buying the ring, or you're enjoying Gas Arrow, then you can just wait until level 58 to swap to Poisonous Concoction. Once you get Alchemist Boon, it's super smooth, and you don't need any extra gear outside of the tree for this to work, aside from a decent mana flask. If you're struggling finding Spirit Gems, you can get a Spirit Gem from the Bog Witch in the Ozok Bog in Act 6, and that'll be when you can swap as well. And here's kind of what the respec will look like at level 58. Alright, so if you wait to swap until level 58, this is what your tree is going to look like. And the basic idea is you are going to be taking out all of the nodes that aren't poison nodes and then go towards poison nodes. It doesn't really matter which poison nodes you take first. The only thing that you want to make sure you're taking is these nodes up here, so you can actually start to use Wither as soon as you get it. You're going to need like 37,000 to 40,000 gold depending on your character level. If you do it right at 58, you're going to need like around 37,000. So make sure that you aren't spending all of your gold on buying vendor items. Honestly, I wouldn't even really suggest buying vendor items after like the first act or two, and just buy items with exalts or whatever currency that you have, because the items that you're going to get for cheap on the trade site will just be better in general than the items you're going to find from vendors for the most part. But anyway, the respec's going to look something like this. You're going to respec like all of these nodes here. Honestly, I can just go through it real quick. And respect all of these nodes here. And then the first thing you're going to do is obviously go up to here. If you want to make sure that you have enough access to int to make it so you can actually use Despair right away, make sure that you have 72 intelligence from this respec. And then also make sure you have dexterity on your quiver. So buy a +2 proj quiver and a +2 dexterity quiver. Then you can also get things like damage, attack damage for bow skills, because for some reason that scales Poisonous Concoction as well. Or you can just get flat damage there. But honestly, if you just have proj damage and dex, it'll make it perfectly fine for you. So yeah, we're going to grab an int node here, and then we're going to grab all of this cluster to Pure Chaos. I'm not going to worry about the Wither effect stuff right away. You can just grab that at a later time, and then you're going to grab these poison nodes. And it doesn't really matter at what point you take these poison nodes either, so we'll confirm those. And then you're going to continue our respec. We're going to respec this point. It's down here. You still want these to get a little bit of extra flash generation. At some point, we might actually just drop all this stuff with the current flash changes. You're going to take these nodes away here, and then you're going to take these nodes. And then at this point, you have just like the pretty much the general idea of the basic Poisonous Concoction tree. Take these nodes, get your more cast damage and +1, and then you'll go over here, take either these poison nodes or take these poison nodes. Doesn't really matter what you're pathing to. Then after you path to these poison nodes, you're going to want to path over here. You're going to, obviously, I probably should have grabbed these nodes also, but you can grab them later after you finish out this node. Grab these nodes here. Then this set of nodes, I would wait until like you're 80, until like the mid 80s to take low tolerance and stuff like that. And same thing with like some of the Wither stuff. You can start to grab this in like your early 70s. And that's pretty much it for the respec. It's super simple. As long as you have 40,000 gold, which shouldn't be too terribly hard to come by at the later levels, it should be perfectly fine. Obviously, if you did take any of the early ascendancy nodes while you were leveling, make sure that you refund those, because clearly we can't play Poisonous Concoction without connect chemistry, although you probably could. Other side note is if you need extra sustain, like if you ever are running out of sustain on bosses, just make sure you upgrade your flask. So like my flask is complete garbage, literally doesn't have any mods on it. Get one that has either flat charges gained or increased charges gained, and you will never have any issues for the rest of the life of your character. And that's pretty much it. I have made some changes to my current Poisonous Concoction build, but that video with the changes and stuff probably won't be out until, either later this week or maybe early next week. That's it. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hopefully this makes it super easy for leveling, and thanks for watching.